Warning: this podcast contains adult material and is not suitable for anyone under the age of 18. You have been warned. Do you like movies?
Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself.
What do you think about horror movies? Blood, guts, and mayhem.
Groovy.
Then, sit back, relax, and listen to the Dead and Rotting Podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to the Dead and Rotting Podcast. I am Tim Tanner, your new favorite buckaroo. I just want to go on record and say that just because I may be critical or may say something kind of funny or it may seem as though I'm cutting down the movies that I watch and stuff, sort of like I did when I reviewed The Vineyard. I am not in any way, shape, or form making fun of or belittling independent movies or low-budget movies or anything like that. In fact, I love low-budget movies. More specifically, I love low-budget horror movies. I love them because, one, they're fun. Two, most of the time they're passion projects for people involved because they're not the big Hollywood people. They're the people that's doing this on the weekends when they can afford to do it, and this isn't their main job. So I'll talk a lot about indie horror movies. And with that being said, I love it. Every movie that I review, I like, and I actually enjoy watching. I will point out some things that seem kind of cheesy or silly, but that's just for fun and maybe give you a laugh. But please don't in any way, shape, or form think that I am making fun of anyone or anything about indie movies. Now, I got that out of my system. I just wanted to say that because I don't want anyone thinking that, oh, this guy's some kind of movie critic butthole. No, I'm not. I enjoy it, and I really do seek it. And especially if you like independent horror movies, and really just anything in general, but definitely independent horror movies, try downloading that Tubi app, because Tubi on our Fire Stick, that's pretty much all I watch. There's some great movies on there. And I just want to give a shout out to one specific filmmaker whose movies I have found on Tubi and really enjoy, and that is Gino McGeehee. I may be pronouncing that last name incorrectly, but he sure does have a whole lot of movies on Tubi, and I recently watched by him Scary Tales Dead Zone. I really enjoyed it, and it's for free. And ain't nothing better than free, folks. And check Gino McGeehee out and some of his movies. He's got a lot on there, so just check him out. Moving on, we're going to do another film critique for a movie that I have never heard of, but apparently a lot of people have heard of, and a lot of people really like. And by a lot of people, I guess that I'm talking about those who really go after the low-budget, hardly seen, and in this case, Canadian movie. This movie is called Beyond the Seventh Door. So what is the movie that we're going to be talking about today? It's called Beyond the Seventh Door, and it is a horror, thriller, crime movie. And I watched it on Tubi, so you can watch it on there for free. And I think the best summary for this movie I found on the severinfilms.com, which they find and produce a lot of these hard to find movies, a lot of which were only found on VHS or in this case in Canada. So anyway, severinfilms.com states that more than 30 years later, it remains one of the most ambitious, sought-after, and totally bizarre low-budget Canadian features of all time. Sort of a huge stretch here for me, but maybe big-time collectors feel this way. I'm sort of blown away by this description. Anyway, it continues with Yugoslavian-born actor Lazar Rockwood in a notorious debut performance that still astounds Canucksploitation fans is Boris, an ex-con and career thief who convinces his ex-girlfriend, Bonnie Beck, to help him rob her wealthy boss's castle. But when Boris discovers that the eccentric millionaire has booby-trapped the building, they'll have to survive 6 riddle-triggered rooms of homicidal mayhem in order to claim the treasure. Writer, director, and future best-selling religious thriller author B.D. Benedict made his unforgettable filmmaking debut with his bottom-shelf VHS classic. Future best-selling religious thriller author B.D. Benedict? What the actual fuck? I mean, sure, we don't see full-on intercourse, but it seems maybe B.D. has a change of heart and maybe thumped the Bible and started writing Christian fiction. But from the looks of his books, if you do a quick Google, he didn't quite go all the way Jesus. So that's the summary of our movie of discussion today. Specs of the movie are as follows. Released originally in 1987, Beyond the Seventh Door runs a brief hour and 23 minutes. As far as the budget for this movie, I couldn't find one. Maybe I have to subscribe to IMDb Pro in order to get the sweet details of the movie. But whatever the case of this tightly held secret of the movie's budget, a surface-level search of the internet doesn't reveal the actual amount of money spent on this film. But you know, we know it's a low budget, and we can tell it's low budget by the looks of it. It was filmed in Toronto and Ontario, Canada. It even looks like they at least got the exterior of a castle for the flick. Everything on the interior shots look like pretty elaborate sets for a low-budget movie. I mean, this is sort of like an escape room way back in 1987. That's pretty progressive for the time, I think. It's like pre-Saw idea or something. Sort of, I guess. Maybe not. Warning, spoilers ahead. Turn back now, you lily-livered movie watcher, if you don't want to intricate details of the movie spoiled for you. Alright, those that are left, I guess, are going to be the ones that don't mind if the details are spoiled. When reflecting on what I think the meat of the movie is, I think it's the strange and off-putting relationship between Boris and Wendy. But I think the best aspect, and possibly the most annoying aspect of Beyond the Seventh Door, is Boris. He's the dude in the movie that is played by Lazar Rockwood. Lazar Rockwood gives us the best acting since The Room. He's as wooden as an outdoor deck and must be suffering from a cold during the making of this movie because he keeps sniffling. Or maybe that was method acting since they're supposed to be in an old grungy castle. We have to grant him some leeway though, because this is his first film. Or at least that's what the internet saith. Anyways, Boris and Wendy's relationship, by the way Wendy is played by Bonnie Beck, is a wacky one to say the very, very least. At the beginning, Boris just got out of jail from a heist gone bad. He meets up with Wendy, his ex, who seems to be sort of into the idea of helping Boris pull off another heist. We get to hear their back and forth. He's sort of pushy and dominant, and Wendy makes it clear she's not interested in getting back together. But Boris has a plan for another heist. This time, however, the heist will be of the weird millionaire that Wendy works for. This time, they'll do it together, and they'll totally work it out. I mean, if you go to prison because you fucked up a robbery once, why not try to do another robbery? This time it's totally going to be better. This time the mark is an old dude who is rumored to have a treasure full of money somewhere in the castle he lives in. Sounds like easy money, right? That just doesn't spell a bad idea at all. Anyway, finally, Wendy gives in and agrees to work with Boris to pull off this one last heist so he can be in the clear. So their strained relationship is back on, temporarily. But you can totally tell, maybe it's the signs on his forehead, that Boris is totes in love with Wendy. Moving on, they set up a time and a place supposedly to meet up at Wendy's work. She is to find the most secretest place she can find, and that, of course, would be exactly where the treasure is. So she does find such a place and tells Boris to meet her there. He comes packing a tool belt with some tools. He is also now a lockpicker, he says. I can't remember if he mentioned that in the first interaction with them or not, but maybe he picked up the skill in the joint. Soon after they find a secret doorway, they discover that not only is there probably a treasure behind the secret door, but now they're trapped. A recorded voice of the old man who owns the castle comes on and tells them that they are, in fact, trapped. They now have to pass through several puzzles to get to the end, or die trying. This leads us to some wacky displays of craftsmanship, where they switch from being inside the industrial complex that's supposed to be the underworkings of the castle to obviously staged rooms with fake bricks and floor. I have to admit, I love the production design because the puzzle rooms are really well made. I mean, they are well made to a point. There comes the last puzzle where Wendy steps on the floor and falls through it. Down, down, down she goes in a tunnel, not unlike that from a Child's Play place. From this point, we see that the actors really had to fake talking to each other from one end of the, quote, tunnel, end quote, to the other. Boris was struggling a little more with the acting than Wendy. She's perhaps the best actor in the whole movie, and when the movie only consists of 3 people, that's not saying a whole hell of a lot. But as Wendy soon discovers, the holes and the pipes sticking out of the walls way down there in the dungeon, well, they start filling the space with water. Down in the hole or dungeon, as it looks like, we discover that the skimpy dress that Wendy has on is slightly magic. I call it the incredible dress of never-ending fabric. The more she rips off, the more it kind of grows back in the next scene. Did she rip it off a little bit here? Oh wait, in the next scene, it's back in that spot. You never know. While stuck down there and yelling up at Boris from the McDonald's Play Place tunnel, Wendy thinks of a great idea to tear her dress apart and stuff the pieces into the pipes that are spilling out water. As most human beings know, clogging a pipe that has rushing water spitting out of it with thin pieces of cloth isn't going to stop the flow of water, but it does tear down the dress and give us a gander at the lingerie she's wearing on underneath. Then we get some interesting scenes up above with Boris. We get to watch Boris put on and take off his belt. Then back down in the dungeon, we get to see Wendy unscrew some screws. Exciting moments in cinematic history. Then once Boris gets down into the dungeon from the tube, he starts to get sexy with leg kissing next to Wendy's naughty region. It's as hot as you'd imagine. Since everything happened has really been leading us to some sexy time between 2 characters that seem as odd a pair as wearing a rubber boot on one foot and a stocking on your ear. This scene is the opposite of sexy and could possibly cause erectile dysfunction. Sure, Wendy is hot, but after all this with Boris, do we really need them to act out this lust that seems to be absent as Boris's acting lessons? No, we don't need this shit. Even the immovable dead guy in the corner doesn't need to see that shit. Eventually, though, after watching Boris unscrew some screws, they make it out of the dungeon. This time, the recorded voice of the castle owner tells them that basically it is the last puzzle. Beyond the 7th door is freedom or something. But there's a suitcase full of cash there just waiting to be picked up. Then upon further investigation, Boris notices that the suitcase of money is rigged. Rigged to what? We don't know. With Wendy begging him to leave the money and just leave with their lives and maybe rekindled love, Boris decides to take the money from the suitcase slowly. That way he doesn't trip the wire, see? So she decides that she'll go back to her room in the castle and take a shower and wait for him to join her. It takes Boris so much time to get the money from the suitcase. He's so careful with it that Wendy takes a whole ass shower during this time. She's waiting ever so patiently as Boris pulls the last of the cash out of the suitcase and BAM! He gets shot or something like that. He's dead. Then we get to see the owner of the castle roll up into Wendy's room in his wheelchair and tell her that he's glad that she brought another dude to play his game. The old dude enjoyed watching them suffer, and also enjoyed the fucking too. Though he didn't come out and say that he enjoyed that part, it's just implied. But he does say that Wendy doesn't have to make love with every dude she lures down there for the sick castle owner to watch play games to their ultimate doom. What a twist. Wendy was the inside woman all along. Boris got played, and ultimately, maybe we got played too.
The future has already arrived. But the past.
I think this movie has sparked a need for me to look into more Canucksploitation films. Beyond the Seventh Door wasn't too bad. It was Citizen Kane compared to some stuff I've watched. I'm talking about you, Corn Man. But here I am, still thinking about this movie. It is indeed interesting, and even more interesting that the filmmakers pulled it off pretty well. I mean, even though Boris was terrible at acting, it didn't totally destroy the enjoyment of the movie. Hopefully you'll watch it and enjoy it. Maybe you won't. But I feel like if you're listening to this podcast and you've come this far, that you'd at least try to watch the movie. Anyway, there are some tense moments in the movie, and since it's mostly a thriller, I guess, I can say that it's also horror too. Mostly because we do have some shock and startle moments and intense build-up of what the hell is going on here. And for some people, the idea of being trapped like that in a sick game is enough horror. Kind of like claustrophobia, I guess.
Maybe we will be back.
In closing, I really do hope you enjoyed listening to me blabber on. It has been fun, and I did have a good time watching Beyond the Seventh Door. I actually forgot to count the doors while watching, but I trust the title that there were 7. Does the hole in the ground count as 1? I don't know. Maybe. If you would like to reach out to us after counting all the doors in the movie, or you would just like to comment on something that's said, send us an email at deadandrottingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you're a filmmaker, music maker, artist of any kind, and would like your art or music featured or have your movie promoted, please let us know. I don't charge for this, and I will not ask for money for promoting your stuff. This is all free. If you're a filmmaker, maybe we can even do an interview at some point. You can also find us on Instagram at Dead and Rotting Podcast. And you can find us on Facebook. If you want to listen to us on other platforms, you can find us on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. I guess that's actually Spotify. Please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, rate, and comment about our podcast. All music and sound effects made by the awesome website pixabay.com. Next episode will be an interview, and I'm so fucking excited. It's always a good time to talk horror movie biz with folks that work in and around the horror movie biz. Hope you'll join me next time, and until then, be safe out there and take care of each other.